Salutations, Shades, and welcome back to your one-stop shop for all things strange and unusual, talking with shadows. The conversation everyone has, but no one wants to admit to. Here with your hosts, Vic Whaley.
And Marcus D. And we got two shout-outs today for today's episode. The first shout-out, we're going to give it to our two newest patrons.
What? We got two new patrons?
Two new patrons. Zeno Smith and Harold Utley. Thank you so much for signing up to become patrons. We appreciate that so much.
I kind of hope Zeno Smith might be a 40K fan, because I am also a 40K fan.
I'm also wondering if he's like the xenomorphs, like from the movie Alien.
It's also possible.
The second shout out that we're going to give to is our good listener Daniel C., who actually gave us a recommendation for what we're going to be drinking today. Daniel sent us over a recommendation it was called something called Evergreen Elderberry. I don't know if you guys, this took a couple of days for it to get to us. It had to come from the magical land of Colorado.
Ooh, in
order to get to us. Although looking at it like elderberry, this sounds like something that you drink in a Dungeons and Dragons game.
I mean, it probably would be. I mean, I drink elderberry wine.
Point of note, though, that this is not actually alcohol. It's supposed to be some sort of I think it's a soda or a drink. Look at the ingredients on it, man. Look at the ingredients on it. The ingredients say sparkling Colorado water and sugar. It is straight sugar water.
Wait, there's no elderberries in it or anything?
It says natural flavor extract and some sort of non-GMO acid, but it's mostly sugar and water. We're going to crack this open and every single mosquito is going to be like, hey guys, sup? I haven't seen you guys in a while. We're going to come over to your house. Boom. All right.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers to you guys. All right. I'm going to take a drink here.
Oh, it's good.
Oh, that is tasty sugar water. Oh, that is. It's actually pretty good. Are elderberries real? Is that a real thing?
Yes,
that sounds made up.
Elderberries are totally a real thing.
Sure?
I think they're English. Don't quote me on that, but I think they're English. They're definitely real. I drink elderberry wine from time to time. It's not my favorite, but it's good.
I really thought that it was fictitious. Like it's something that you find like in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, which is fine because we love Dungeons and Dragons. We're two big D&D nerds, and I was like, this sounds awesome.
You still might find it in a D&D campaign because it's still kind of time appropriate.
I'm not gonna lie. This tastes way better than what I thought that it was gonna taste like.
So I ordered the thing that you're wanting to do an unboxing of.
Oh, that's going to be awesome.
Do you want me to tell them about it?
Yeah, we're going to tell you that. For years, guys, I've been saying don't do this, but Vic finally figured out the way to try to convince me to do this. So you want to go ahead and share what we're going to be doing soon?
Okay. I have ordered a Ouija board, and Marcus is like, if we're going to order that, I want to do an unboxing video.
Yeah, I want to do I've always wanted to, open one of those because you find them in the toy store.
And we're specifically not getting one offline. We're getting one specifically from the toy store for your unboxing.
And I'm going to unbox it because I want to see what the instructions on it actually says. To see what they tell you to do, how to use this sort of thing.
Just so you know, that was so upsetting to Ellie because at first she was going through looking at all these really fancy ones online.
We're going to get something from Milton Bradley.
Yeah, I'm like, actually, he's wanting the Walmart one. And she's like, but I want one of these.
No, I want to see. Can we get a Simpsons Ouija board, or can we get a Family Guy? Is that a thing?
I don't.
Can we get a theme?
I don't know. I'm not really a Ouija board guy.
Oh, maybe they make one Clue or something like that, where it's the object that killed somebody, in the game of Clue, Mrs. Peacock in the observatory with the Ouija board.
The reason why I talked him into doing this is we're listening to a podcast and someone brought up the idea, could you contact a UFO using a Ouija board? And I jokingly was like, would you be willing to do this as an experiment? And what was your response?
I said, sure. Like, again, I don't think that we're actually going to summon it. Dude, I also like to point out the way that you tried to, like, sneakily try to get me to do the hard part of this exercise, by the way. You're like, yeah, I'll buy the Ouija board, Marcus, if you find the UFO hotspot that we can go to, like, in Evansville, Indiana. Like, no way. That's the much easier task to buy it at, like, the Walmart.
You still didn't volunteer to do that part.
What, to go get it?
Yeah.
I'll go buy the Ouija board. You can't get
Too late.
hurt.
Already bought it.
That's fine. We're going to find the UFO hotspot together. If you guys know of a UFO hotspot, by the way, near Evansville, Indiana, please comment that below.
Right, what, within an hour drive?
Sure. Maybe
Sounds
even
good.
a little bit more. I'll probably
go
drive
a little
for
further.
Yeah. Also, if you guys have a drink recommendation for us for the podcast, put it below. Although you're going to get the next week. This was $30 to order this, which was so worth it, by the way, because it was good. But
I didn't realize you were getting this. I had beer in the fridge for the episode. We get to just use that next time.
this tastes just as good.
Oh, no, it's very tasty.
I've had, like, one of their, like, big things in it said made with real cane sugar, like made with cane sugar. Like, the thing good about it is that it comes with, like, real products, not something that's fake.
What I like about it is it's not, like, overly sweet. Mm-hmm. I do occasionally like sweet things, but I don't like things to be really, really sweet. It just has a slight sweet taste to it, and that's what I like about it.
Even though it has just as much sugar as, like, a can of Coke.
Hey, as long as they knock down that sweet taste, I don't care.
Sure. All right, let's go over some comments, like, from our last episode that we did. If you guys haven't checked out episode 65, we did a whole episode on dire dogs. Vic did a deep dive into the study of these large black bear-sized dogs that apparently are known for charging out of the woods and running into people's cars.
Not just running into people's cars, trying to drive the car off the road with its massive head.
So if you have not checked that episode out, go check it out. It is super weird, and you just will not find this kind of a conversation just anywhere. All right. Lishan says, this is what I like about OCS, one of the very few paranormal podcasts that discuss very unusual topics that even the paranormal community doesn't touch on often.
OCS, I like that abbreviation.
I do like the OCS. I love that. And that's true. This whole month, we're going to be talking about just strange things that people just don't talk about.
And that used to be our big thing of us just tackling the most obscure subjects we could find. I'm glad to get back to it. I like that.
Even if we talk about something that people know, if you guys listen to this podcast, you're going to be hearing conversations that people just don't have. I mean, this is, we're going to be talking about stuff that we think people should be having. We're surprised that they're not having. And, we try to talk about stuff just differently than other people. Nick Chasbo says, pumped for June. I'm really glad you guys touch on topics that nobody really does in your own research. All of the top YouTube vids on paranormal conspiracy occult topics are done by channels with millions of subs who have very little interest in topics and just read off wikis. You stand up from the pack. Cheers, boys.
Well, thank you, man. We appreciate that.
Cheers to you, Nick. By the way, I'm going to take another drink of this elderberry soda. Absolutely. Jack Darby said, I've heard there was accounts of lycanthropy in Sudan and other parts of Africa. I'm very interested in these because the source was good, but so far I've heard nothing.
This one hasn't come across my radar yet. I'm going to need to do some digging into this one and see what I find.
I think there are stories of were hyenas that come out of that come out of Africa as a thing, I do believe, which would be very interesting for us to touch on. I think that'd be a really cool topic.
Oh yeah, Africa's history with shapeshifters is actually pretty cool. There's some pretty cool stuff in there. It'll get a little goblin-y at times, but it's pretty cool.
Also, some of the harder stuff about getting stuff out of Africa is there's so many eclectic groups, but also a lot of people not connected to the internet.
Yep.
So a lot of times you do get a lot of these really local stories. Like that time that we were in Leavenworth and we were hearing, we're talking to that one kid who was talking about his dad literally seeing an entire giant beam of green energy shooting out of a tribe, a neighboring tribe or something like that. I'm like, Jesus.
We should probably reach out to him at some point and see if we can't get him as in a guest spot.
Yeah. Izzy28 says, have you guys heard of the red shoes conspiracy? It's about rich people turning human skin into clothing. No one really speaks about it on YouTube. It's really freaky and scary. I know what you're talking about. These photos there was a photo going around. I don't know if it was in the last year or so of all of these. I think they were senators and stuff, and they all had these red shoes that they all put their left or right foot forward in the photo. And a lot of people speculate that these were made out of the remains of people. No. I've heard the conspiracy. I've heard the conspiracy.
And I've heard of human flesh being made into shoes before, but I don't think I'm familiar with this specific conspiracy.
Mary Grace says, "Flex, flex, flex. Where's my check, Marcus?"
She's got your number, man.
Oh, thank you so. Oh, we appreciate that, man. It's in the mail. It's gonna be a post-dated check. That's what that's what it's gonna be. Appreciate that, yeah. And I'm also sorry, guys, too, that this episode's coming in a little bit later than normal. Me and Vic have been a little busy with a lot of stuff. My new job has been just hustling, bustling. Oh, man, you have no idea. Like, I do a lot of nonprofit work now. If you guys haven't heard, I left the hospital, and I was out today doing a lot of community outreach, and I was with one of my coworkers, and we went to talk with this person, and I about had a brain aneurysm. Because we're sitting there, and this person is telling us about how they think that their house is haunted, and I want to hear so much more. And my coworker just immediately just changes the conversation to a fundraising topic. And I'm like, no, please. I know. I wanted to hear so much more about your haunted house. This is so unfair. Oh, man. Oh, it was just so not fair. Oh, but now we're back. We're going to be, on this Saturday, we're going to be recording an interview with Bigfoot researcher Daniel Benoit. I didn't get my wife to help me with pronouncing the last name. If you guys haven't heard, Daniel Benoit is a really awesome Bigfoot researcher that actually hosts his own paranormal Bigfoot conference. He's the author of Learning Bigfoot, as well as this one of the books we're going to be talking about. As well as we're talking about his Bigfoot conference that he's holding actually here in a couple weeks. So
I'm looking forward to our next episode where it's just me and you talking, because I have a really weird one to kind of wrap up this month.
Oh, no. Even when we're going to be talking with Dan, I've got some weird questions to ask him about Bigfoot hunting, because I know that there's some things that I want to touch on with him that I think I'll be aware of that a lot of other people don't talk about when they talk about Bigfoot hunting. So, but for today, guys, I thought we could talk about something a little bit. So I was perusing Reddit. You know, I like to peruse Reddit. Like if I'm looking for like weird accounts from people, it's a good thing. There's a lot of good subreddits that are on there, and I came upon an account from somebody that I thought that was really interesting, and it just got my brain just thinking and twisting. And it was a Reddit post that was talking of an experience that they had, and I don't know if it was a man and woman. They don't use any pronouns and their name, their username was kind of off, but they were talking about a time in the early 2000s when they were with their dad and their stepmom, and they went to this town called Ashwood, Oregon. And if you don't know that town, that's a ghost town that's all the way out there in eastern Oregon. And this Reddit user was talking about that they were going out there to eastern Oregon with their dad and their stepmom because they were looking for rocks. They were like rock collectors, and apparently like this is the place to go. And they knew that apparently somebody in the area knew like a really good hotspot for finding rocks. So they're driving to this town, and it's way off the beaten path. And if you've never been to Eastern Oregon, Western Oregon is like a lot of trees. Eastern Oregon is just like desert and just barren. Well, it's not like a desert, but it's like a lot more open,
like a prairie land.
Yeah. So they're talking about going to this town, and the one thing that they notice whenever they're driving into Ashwood is that there's a bunch of trees that block the sight of the town as you drive into it. So as you're driving into this town, like it's like off the beaten path, and you wouldn't even know it was there off this dirt road. So they get in there so they're driving into this town, and the first thing that they notice is there's a church, like a little church with a cemetery that's attached right to it, which they thought was kind of weird because this person apparently didn't see like a church with a cemetery attached to it. Freaked them out.
Isn't that pretty standard fare though?
Yeah, I think if you're from a rural area, yes. If you're from like an urban city, not as much. I think if you're from a bigger, like to me, that before I like met you, before like I really got on, like went to a lot more rural towns, like no, this would probably freak me out because I wouldn't know about this. Like no church that I've ever been to has a cemetery attached to it.
Really?
Yeah.
Like probably about 50% of the churches back where I grew up had a attached cemetery.
Oh yeah, a lot of the ones that I went to, they were separate.
Okay.
But after the church, which is really the only thing that I think that I can like right away. But anyway, but they noticed that there's about 12 houses all lined up in a row, all painted the same. They're all gray with blue trim, and then all of them have blue tarps over the windows.
Okay, that's a little weird. Okay.
No, it's gonna get weirder.
Wait, I just have something to throw in here.
Mm-hmm.
You might think, oh, of course, blue tarps is probably the only thing you have around. I actually know. Okay, I'll explain why I know this. I used to LARP a lot, and one of the things that LARPs always want as donation are tarps. Oh, you were there too.
I know.
And they always wanted tarps, so I would always buy tarps to take into like wherever I was going. And you might think, oh, blue tarps, that's like really common. It's
actually
you
not.
do see blue tarps from time to time, but if you're buying a whole bunch of tarps like I was, it would be hard for me to get a whole bunch of blue tarps unless it just happened to have all been there. Mm-hmm. And I think that is actually a bit of a peculiar thing.
Mm-hmm. I think most of the ones we ever ended up donating were all gray.
Yeah, gray. Yeah. Gray and metallic and brown. Mm-hmm. And like kind of military green were the ones I saw most often.
Okay, so this Reddit user is there with their dad, and their dad says that they need to go talk to this woman. And they roll up to the post office, and this is around like noon. And their dad gets out, tries to go to the post office. It's closed in the middle of the week at like noon. And so like he tries to call the post office to see if like if there's somebody in there. They can hear the phone ring. Nothing. So he leaves a message. So they decide that they're going to leave and just come back, and they're just going to haul butt out of the town. As they're leaving the town, the stepmom and the Reddit user says that they see this weird black shape moving through the woods, and then a large black dog bolts out of the woods and runs right into the car, like knocking into the car.
Wait, so is this connected to the whole dire dog thing?
I missed this part of the story before we did the dire dogs episode, so no. But it wasn't like bear size. They said like a Great Dane size. So like, I mean, he's still a big dog.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like more like a black shuck kind of situation, I would say, more than like, or a bargeist more than I would say than like a dire dog. But this is a weird coincidence. I literally overlooked this part of the story when I first read it.
And this is during the day, right?
During the day, like noon, like middle of the day, high noon is time. And so the dog immediately hits the car. So they stop the car, and the dog's like, what's going on? What happened? What just happened? And they're like, there was a dog that ran out of the woods. The dog ran out of the woods and just ran into the car. So he stops, and he gets out, and he goes around, and the dog's gone. Doesn't see the dog, doesn't see any evidence of the dog actually like running into the car. But it was enough that it significantly shook the car. And then they're like, that's it. We're out of here. They get in the car and they leave. Apparently, like a little bit later in the day, somebody calls their dad up, and it's a man with a raspy voice saying, "Oh no, that lady knew about the rock. She left. She's not been here for a long time. Don't come back." Like, yeah.
Okay, red flags everywhere. Red flags.
Yeah. Like the Reddit user was freaked out. Like she thought like immediately thought like vampires had like taken over the city, like with all the tarps blocking all the windows and stuff. And so the Reddit user was told the story to a friend it was like sometime later, and the friend didn't seem all that concerned. And they're like, no, yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. That's one of those shrine towns. Shrine towns, yeah. And it's something that's very common. Like, you see these all the time. Like, apparently, like, there's these towns, like, out in the rural nowhere where it's, like, super secluded, and the town is guarding something in some way, shape, or form. Either there's some entity bound somewhere within the town that they're watching. There's some sort of particular special thing about the town that it makes them, like, dislike outsiders coming into the community. And I thought this was a really weird. I searched everywhere, high and low, to see if I could either find another person talking about this sort of thing. I posted my own post about these shrine towns, asking if somebody else had ever like heard this. Nobody ever heard that word before, but other people were commenting on it, talking to me about like saying that they know what I'm talking about when you see that there are just some of these towns that just don't like outsiders coming in. And there's a lot of people that even talk about that they've saying that they're sensitive and they can sense evil or something, and we're saying that they've been in some of these towns like this before where they feel like they're guarding something.
Okay, I got a few things backed up that I wanted to talk about here.
So that's, I think, a lot about what I wanted to talk about today.
Oh yeah, I'm ready to start chewing the fat on this.
Yeah.
Okay, first I want to throw it out. I came from a very small town. I mean, somewhere between 200 and 300 people lived there at most. And people came through all the time, and we were always super nice to them. It's not like just one of those things where, like, small, isolated towns. And our town was pretty isolated. Like, we had no issue with strangers coming by. You might get an odd look sometimes back when I was growing up if you had weird colored hair, but nowadays the girl who works at our only store has bright colored hair, and everyone's cool with it now. And we're perfectly friendly nowadays.
Very progressive background. We said where you're from.
Yeah. I'm from Hayden, Indiana.
Yeah. By the way, I've been there, and I've been there several times. Hayden has a population of 250 people. Nicest people that you are ever going to meet. I remember we went to, I think it was, they called it the Rocky Top.
Yep, the Rocky Top is the oldest diner on Highway 50, and it's actually just right outside of Hayden.
Nicest people. We went in there with your godfather who hadn't been in there for like a while. Still remembered his order. They were very welcoming of us. You hadn't been there in a while before when we were at the hub, and we were actually there the other day. They were still going to make you omelets, even though they had stopped serving omelets at this was it a gas station?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like years ago. Like the nicest people that you will ever meet.
Oh yeah, and like I just want to make it clear, like most small towns are not like this. Just to kind of point out the unusualness of this, in my experience, most small towns are generally very friendly, like extra friendly compared to most places.
Also, now for the record. And for the point of argument, I've also done a lot of home-based casework, and I've driven to a lot of rural cities in southern Indiana, and there are also some towns that look like they are on the set of The Hills Have Eyes right before they say action. Okay, I am fully aware that this is a thing, that there are some just creepy as F all places that you can go that are not as welcoming as Hayden, Indiana, by the way.
But one of the other things I wanted to bring up is the possible bargeist. Yes, it's kind of odd that it's being seen during the day, because it was during the day at that point.
Right.
And it's a little odd that it rammed a truck. I've heard of them chasing them or scratching at them. I've not really heard too much of them ramming them. Mm-hmm. But an interesting connection is she pointed out the church had a cemetery.
Yes.
And I know they didn't have a pronoun for it. I'm just going to go with she. Are you familiar with church grims?
Church grim. No, no.
It's a specific form of bargeist that can be created through ritual to protect a church's cemetery. And I've heard a few folkloric descriptions of how this ritual can go about, but one of the more common ones I've heard is that the first thing that's laid to rest in the cemetery becomes the guardian for the cemetery. And they usually didn't want that to be a person because they want the person to go to heaven. So usually, and this is, I believe, a Catholic ritual, a rural Catholic ritual, they'd usually kill a dog and lay it to rest first in the cemetery, creating this spiritual dog creature, basically a bargeist. But in this situation, it's specifically referred to as a church grim. And it's supposed to be like just a guardian of the area. And it has that very hellhound bargeist sort of description.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's all dark. It usually has red glowing eyes. It can appear and disappear. Things along those lines. I thought that was an interesting connection, particularly since the poster had pointed out the cemetery and the church.
I wonder too, like if this had the reason about why, like in the middle of the day, this creature felt the need to like attack these people, like they were coming to maybe. You know, I don't know if maybe there's a whole town of vampires, and that's why nobody was there during the day, because they didn't meet actually anybody during the day, and it was trying to drive them away in case maybe one of them like may go back and open one of these doors.
Well, I mean, if it's a church grim, in theory, it could potentially be controlled. It's a ritually created supernatural creature.
There's just some sort of like rural wizard or witch out there that's like, attack these people, come to look for our shiny rocks. These are our shiny rocks. You will not take our rocks, you urban usurper.
The other thing is maybe it's just overly protective, like overly aggressive. It's because we don't know where they were driving. We don't know if they were close to the church or the cemetery at that point.
Yeah, the time that they were leaving.
Just a connection I made from the story, but
like this isn't the only type of thing that I've heard of something similar to this with these idea of these shrine towns, or there's something being like connected to this. Like we ran into this in Mammoth Cave. Like when we were down there, we were talking to that lady who was the Reiki master, and she was talking about like Mammoth Cave Baptist Church that's in there. It's in there saying that something was bound specifically to the church, Mammoth Cave Baptist Church, and people went up there and released it. That whenever we were up there, and it went into supposedly Mammoth Cave is what she said. Whenever we were there, and there were times in which we went up there, and the church is still being utilized to this day. When we were up there, there was a whole bunch of weird paranormal activity that was going on while we were there.
When we went to check it out afterwards, there were some odd goings on. Like there were some odd things happening. We're eventually going to put all the video together and get it to you guys. But that was an interesting trip. We're actually planning on going back at some point.
And this wasn't even and again, that's not even that. Have you ever heard of the shrine in Boone, Iowa?
No.
I was talking about that. Yeah. So this guy, this old man, like in his like late 70s, built this massive, like almost 1-story shrine, like right across the street from his property.
This is that thing you showed me the picture
of.
of.
Yeah. And like nobody in the town will talk about, like nobody really claims that they know why this guy built this. And this guy literally just built this massive artwork shrine, literally across the street from his house. I put the photo of it, like on our Patreon for people so that they could see it. And like anybody that tries to go interview this guy about why that he sees it, he immediately becomes defensive about it. And like refuses to say, he's like, I don't want to effing talk about it, and gets pretty hostile and aggressive, like with people surprisingly wanting to talk about this massive shrine that you've built in front of your house.
I looked at it and I was trying to find anything that had any telltale occultic symbols or anything like that. And I guess the picture I had wasn't super detailed, but nothing jumped out on me specific on what it could be related to based on iconography. The only thing I was seeing, it kind of struck me a little bit like a fairy house, where, like, say, if you're doing work on your land and you believe that there are fairies there, you have to be careful because, say, you end up turning over a rock and that rock is a fairy's house. Now the fairy's going to, like, do bad things to your family. They'll try to steal your children or kill your livestock or foul your crops and things like that. Like, people in parts of Europe take this stuff very seriously. It's more of a rural tradition. So if you're going to be doing work in the area where you think the fae are, you build them a fairy house. That way, if you do turn over the wrong rock and mess their stuff up, they'll go live in the fairy house instead. And there's even a tradition where you build the fairy house before you do the work, and then you go to like the hill or the tree or whatever your family has always said that's where the fairies live. And you negotiate with them to move into there before you do the work. And supposedly, if you can't succeed in the negotiation, you just don't do it. And I kind of feel like it had a little bit of a fairy house vibe to it.
Yeah. But it was very odd that the guys just seemed shocked that that people would just even come and ask him about it.
I mean, it's very peculiar how hostile he is about it.
Yeah, like he's very like he won't even come up with a lie as to what even that it is. Like, not even just saying, yeah, it's just some art that I built just because I like it. That's all you gotta say. Like, he won't even lie about it. Like,
perhaps he's under some sort of agreement with a supernatural creature, perhaps
I guess
that he won't speak of the matter.
I guess. And I mean, it's not even, and there's so many more examples of this that people just don't even realize. Like Northern Evansville, in Northern Evansville, there's a whole group of people that like Evansvillian politics. I know people like don't get it. There's like the city of Evansville, and then there's like rural Evansville, which is like right outside of it, and it's two very different. It's two very different areas. Like, it really is. Like, when they merged our city and our county governments, like, the people in the county got really, really crappy about this because of what happened. Like, they just saw themselves as like just a different community. There's a community like way up in northern Indiana that I know you know about these people that like I don't know if they worship or they're just out there. They're these caretakers of this area with supposedly this entity bound under the earth up there, like up there. Remember they.
Okay, I'm giving him a look because I am not recalling this.
Remember they were talking about this. You said that they were dealing with some hoodoo stuff up there. I'm not trying to name drop the particular group.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
I'm not trying to name drop the specific group because I don't want them mad at. But this is just a type of thing that happens. There are these people that are out there that that are very pagan. Out there. I don't know if I'm using the correct word because I'm trying to use a word that's not. I know the name of the group.
Occultic.
Yeah, occultic people.
Occultic
I know the name of the group. I just don't want to say it like on this because I'm trying to give them some privacy for
They are allowed to be out there and practice however they like.
Yes,
but I've known some people involved with it, and they were up to some
weird stuff.
If you believe in occultic stuff, they were up to some super witchy shenanigans.
Yes, and I know people. Yeah, and I also know people within that community. That are out there, and they're not the most receptive of people. I mean, they're just not. I mean, so there does seem to be this weird phenomenon, and I would call that a shrine town. I would call that a particular community of people that have this occultic, that are tied to some sort of occultic entity out there. That
are they still up there?
Yeah. No. Well, sorry. The people that I know of, that I knew are not up there, but I do believe there are some of them that are still there. But the ones that I personally knew, no, they moved.
Okay, I knew that there was a guy involved with him at one point that I knew him. Me and him were not friends, but it seemed like he was trying to take it in like a real, like, drink the Kool-Aid cult sort of direction.
Right. But again,
but something else around here that really strikes me as a shrine town more so than that. You probably know where I'm going.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Dogtown. Yeah, we're going to talk about Dogtown. That's just another community in Evansville. That's down by the river where the flood wall ends, and they are not the most welcoming of people.
Like, no, it'll get weird. Yeah. I have very rarely ever been in Dogtown without being followed.
Yeah, I've been down there too.
Very unusual.
I remember the time we went down there with Ellie, and someone flashed us down when she was driving, and she stopped the car, and I'm in the backseat laying like, "Why are you stopping? Keep going!"
And the weird thing is, it's not uncommon for, if you're back there, someone will just start flashing their high beams and try to get you to pull over.
Yeah,
and then they'll just lie to you. Yeah. Just lie to you to try to get you out of there.
And there's all sorts of weird stuff that we've talked about down there with the bridge down there that's in Dogtown. There's some sort of weird dog creature that's been sighted like within that particular area. There's all sorts of haunted buildings that are in there. Spatial
a lizard man sort of thing.
Spatial anomalies.
Yeah,
it's all sorts of weird crap that's down there, and the people are just not nice. That's down there. They're very like. I would call Stull, Kansas a shrine town. I would call it as well. There's a portal to hell that's there. They're very not welcoming to people that go down there.
Oh, wait. I wanted to tell them one of the stories about us getting flagged down at Dogtown.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're driving along. I can't remember if... Were you here with me for... Do you know the story I'm about to tell?
Which one?
Okay, I'll get into it, and you tell me if you were there. Mm-hmm. Okay. We're driving around, and I think it was Ellie driving, and someone starts flashing their high beams, getting her to pull over. And for some reason, she pulls over.
I think we're talking about the same one. Yeah.
And the guy comes up next to our car and goes, "Hey, you know the cops are around here." There's this big drug bust. Like a bunch of people were just over there doing cocaine and stuff, and now the cops are looking for everybody. Yeah, they're just arresting anyone who they can find.
I know, they're shining their lights. They're looking for somebody. I don't know who it is.
Yeah, and we're like, okay, what? So we go to investigate the area where he said all this was going on, where all the cops were, and we get there and there's no one there. There's nothing.
Nothing.
But yeah, they'll just pull you over and lie to you to get you out of there, and there's not a big history of people going down there and doing violence and stuff like that.
So I have to ask you now, and because I wanted to talk about this like concept of shrine towns, because I've been mulling this over for the last 3 days when I'm at work, because I don't want to be because I'd rather be thinking about this stuff than work, and it got me thinking a lot about the Satanic Panic in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times during that time, like a lot of people are talking about seeing like weird occultists, and they call them Satanists out there. There's a couple accounts of people out there doing some weird hoodoo, occulty stuff.
I mean, there are cults out there.
Right. No. Yeah, it's a thing. So what I'm wondering is also at the same time, like with the 80s, this is the rise of like the digital age and mass communication that's going on. Do you think a lot of like with the Satanic Panic, like what's going on is a lot of these, like, because people know about the shrine towns in their area. They're not shocked about them. They know these things. Like, do you think that what that was more or less more people coming into contact with other community shrine towns? And like, this is just being like expressed across like to the outside world now.
I could potentially see it. Well, the thing is this. I've never heard the term shrine town before you brought it up.
Right.
But when you describe what it means, I have ran into those before.
And a lot of people, what happens is in the paranormal is they don't know the words to use, so they do their best. So that's, again, they see something in the occult, they don't know what it is, so the word Satanist gets thrown out.
I can see that being very easily associated with
it.
it.
And that's, I mean, that's one of the hardest things about the paranormal is terms. Is like, am I using the same terms as you? And so, like, if people don't know what's going on in many of these shrine towns, like the term Satanist could easily be thrown out by like just Christian people just trying to describe what they're seeing in many of these shrine towns.
Well, think about it like this. When people do randomly stumble upon these occultic groups, what's the description that they always give?
They're in cultists. Oh, sorry, they're in robes, like hooded
and
robes.
What color robes?
Black robes, and they're chanting weird things.
Okay, and then for example, if you asked a random person, what do you think a Satanist cult would look like? What would they say?
Black robes, upside down crosses, chanting dark Latin rituals.
I mean, yeah, and
sacrificing animals.
Do I think these are necessarily Satanists? Probably not like the LaVey Satanistic Church. They seem like they have their whole other thing going on. But I think that they could have been becoming aware of small occultic groups out there and then mislabeling them Satanists. I could see that being a likely possibility. And probably some are. Probably some were Satanists.
So I guess my question is why is it that there's so many of these that are met with so much aggression and hostility? Because we've ran into this, other people have ran into this. There's sometimes when it's just not necessary, like not necessary. I've even seen just this level of just just the, I don't want to say rudeness, like there's just this standoffishness.
And there was a investigator checking out this new anomalous zone that he won't share where it is. And he found out about it because of someone who was exploring in that area. And one of the locals just pulled up next to him and pulled a gun on him. He was like, you better get out of here. I mean, that's more extreme than most of what we've encountered. But even what we've encountered, I would say, goes beyond normal rationality.
Right. Like, I understand a lot when we've had conversations before in the past about the reasons about why people often use magic. Is using it, like a lot of people use it as a means for power, or they'll use it kind of as a shortcut. Like I think even the lay person that stumbles upon this though wouldn't even know how to utilize that. They wouldn't even know what to do. Like I don't even see that as like necessarily like a direct threat. Like even if you drove past this shrine, you wouldn't even know what to do. Like when I was out there like in Mammoth Cave, if that entity was bound, I wouldn't know what to do to even mess with that situation.
Well, we're currently working off the theory that these shrine towns are built around some paranormal force. Like, say, if we're going to use the example of Dogtown, we would probably assume the entity associated with the bridge. Mm-hmm. If we're assuming that in these sort of shrine towns that there are people engaging in these rituals, and you're asking me how would they know it, perhaps whatever entity is bound there told them that it. Maybe they were taught by a supernatural being how to use that. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time in folklore that something like that had occurred. Now, I'm not saying that there's some sort of dark cult in Dogtown and we need to all go get them. I think there's some very peculiar things going on in Dogtown, and it has an interesting paranormal history.
Like, you can go there during the day and be just fine.
Oh, yeah, go during the day. If you're going to go during the day.
My grandparents used
to
talk.
They're fine during the day.
They used to have a restaurant there. My grandparents were like, oh, yeah, I used to love going down to the Dogtown Tavern down there. It was great.
Oh, yeah, and I've never had one issue going to Dogtown during the day.
Just not at night.
At night, you will likely have some issues. But if you're asking where do these rituals originate from?
No. I said, where does this hostility like come from? Is what I'm saying. Like, it just seems like it's just even like unnecessary. Like,
if we're going with the theory that it's associated with these shrined entities, likely they're possibly being protective of it.
Like, I wonder. Like sometimes, like I wonder sometimes too if something is and I don't know if I'm off the rails, maybe. but like it's almost like it's a guilt thing. Like maybe like if something bad had happened and they just realize this, and they just don't want people snooping around, and maybe that's the reason why they're just being so standoffish about it. Like I don't know. Like it perplexes me. Like I don't know.
Like what do you mean by guilt thing? Can
Like
you be a little
say
more specific?
like say like something bad happened in a community. They're covering it up. They're doing something hinky or hoodoo. They know that they shouldn't be doing in that particular area for some sort of reason. Like when you know you're in the wrong and you know you're not doing something okay, right? It affects you, right? Makes you feel bad. It starts affecting your behavior. Like, I wonder if that's something that's going on. If it's just deep down, they know, like, in some of the, I'm not saying all of these places. I'm saying in some of these places. And I'm only saying that because I've experienced this with people becoming very overtly hostile to me.
Let me post
like that happens.
Let me word the situation slightly differently.
Mm.
How do you think if there was a isolated community of people that are working with a paranormal, likely negative entity, and based on what I've heard about these people, I'd assume probably it's a negative entity. How do you believe those people would behave?
Probably paranoid and standoffish, yeah.
Yeah, and they're probably not going to be especially if this entity is powerful enough, it's interacting with them and causing normal paranormal effects, the usual paranormal effects within its radius. I would suspect that these people are probably emotionally damaged individuals. I'd assume that this is causing distress in their life.
I like how we're so off the beaten path in this conversation. We're talking about
way out there.
We're talking about normal paranormal effects, and we all just kind of understand what we're talking about. Like normal paranormal effects, ghosts, shit moving, time space anomalies, whatever.
Marcus,
abducted by aliens. Like this is all normal. Like we're talking about now that.
We're talking about isolated towns worshiping bound entities and driving people away. We are way out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, if these shrine towns are real, do you think that? I know we've encountered things that are very similar, and I would say likely this is true. The thing is, like, my issue with it is more in the minutia.
Right.
It's like, I know that there are weird communities out there that will act unreasonable for no apparent reason, that are also associated with major paranormal activity.
Right.
Now I don't know that they're worshiping them. Maybe they're giving these black robes to go try to dispel it, and they don't want anyone like interrupting the ritual or something. Like I say, I do believe these things exist. It's the minutia I have issue with.
Also,
but wait, I haven't got to my actual question yet.
Great, very point.
Okay. Do you think that these are all groups that independently came about in isolation of each other?
Yeah.
And then just all evolved in the same direction?
Yeah, I do.
Then I would say that
I don't think it's connected.
probably they would have to have a similar sort of entity at the center of it all for them to be guided into that very specific sort of direction.
Not necessarily.
Sorry, an entity with similar motives at least.
Well, okay. Like I still think that element in these very isolated towns, I think many like elements of a rural town are still there. You want to stay in your town because you grew up in this town.
Yeah, you have town pride.
Yeah, your friends and family from this particular area. That's why you stay in this particular area.
Up to the point I moved away from Hayden, I was dead set I was going to die in Hayden.
Right. That's the reason about why you stay in these communities. Now, if you have some sort of weird, major, like bizarre entity that's in town that has existed forever, you as a town have probably come to an understanding about how to deal with it or how to come to terms with it. Maybe somebody coming into town.
He's looking for the bottle opener so I can have another soda.
Yeah, maybe somebody coming into town, they're worried about them messing it up. And that would be a threat to them living in this town.
Oh, yeah, and I would assume that this aspect of aggression stems from outsiders being interlopers.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd assume that would be a part of it.
Right. Now think about, let's go back to your hometown of Hayden. Imagine Hayden, there was an entity that they had taken care of that was in the particular area, but they all get to stay in Hayden because they've learned to handle this. And then Marcus D comes along, and I've come to this town, and I might mess with that in some sort of sure way that may threaten their town harmony. Like, how do you think the town of Hayden...
may even anger the entity.
Yeah. Like, how do you think that the town of Hayden then would respond to Marcus D?
They do everything they could to get rid of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So maybe in the end, it's not... That's the reason about maybe where all this hostility and aggression is coming from, is they're seeing this person coming into the town as a threat to that... to their community in that regard.
Well, I think that we still have some fat to chew on this.
I know.
Are we continuing this conversation into the
Yeah. We'll keep going. We may end up touching on something else. I'm not sure kind of wherever the conversation is going, but like, what do you guys think? Like, have you guys ever experienced one of these shrine towns? Do you guys call them something else? I would love to know if you guys call them something else.
I've never heard a term for it before.
I haven't either. What would you guys call these things? Have you had an experience with one of these? Put it in the comments below. Why do you guys think there's so much, like, a lot of like hostility that comes from many of these communities when somebody comes in?
Someone needs to make a roadmap.
I agree. Like somebody like us.
After we get the new office.
Like, if you liked the episode, don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're listening on YouTube, hit the notification bell. That way you stay up to date whenever we put out a new episode. And if you're listening on iTunes, leave us a review. Or if you're listening to anywhere where you can leave us a review, please leave us a review. And like we said at the beginning of the episode, comment a drink suggestion. We need some more suggestions for some drinks. Daniel was pretty on the mark with his elderberry stuff, which I like. So we really appreciate that, man. But until next time, guys, keep believing.
Because we'll keep listening.
All right, let's slide into the Pillow Talk segment of this podcast. This part of the podcast is where we continue talking a little bit more about the topic or possibly even a new topic. And to make trails off, if you would like to catch the rest of this awesome podcast, all you have to do is go over to our Patreon and sign up for as little as $1 a month. You get all of the rest of these awesome podcasts as well as bonus videos that we put up there. And if you're a $2 a month or more member of our Patreon, you get to vote in our poll for the theme of each month. And right now, the current themes right now are hairy humanoids, ghost towns, time-space anomalies, and strange Earth theories. And it pretty much is almost a 4-way tie right now.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so you guys are going to have to go sign up so that way you guys can vote and break the tie to see what we're going to be talking about.
Okay, there's something I want to get back into from the original story we have not really touched on yet.
I agree, and there's something else I want to get into too, which is my second elderberry here. So,
I busted mine open just a while ago.
Yeah. Hand me the top. Oh, there we go, the bottle opener. Thank you. Dan, you are a genius, good sir, by the way, for the suggestion. This is delicious, by the way. Tasty. That's pretty good.
You know, one of the episodes coming up, I'm going to mix you a handcrafted drink. I want to see what you think about it, but I'm not going to tell you what's in it.
No. The very first drink that you ever mixed for me was a joke drink called a submit mixer, which was like Bailey's something else, and then you like squirt lime juice in there, and it tasted like